Captain Deho stood on the bridge of his ship, watching the stars through the large window. The silence was broken by a sharp beep from the communication system. His officer Jinwoo looked up from his station with worry in his eyes. "Captain, we have an urgent message from Kepler 442b. It's marked as Priority 1. Deho walked over to the communication console. Kepler 442b was a quiet farming world on the edge of human space. Nothing exciting ever happened there. He pressed the button to open the message. The face of Sunja appeared on the screen. She was the administrator of the farming colony. A middle-aged woman who usually looked calm and controlled. Today she looked scared. "Captain Deho, we need help immediately. Strange aliens have arrived at our colony. They call themselves the Villani. They say humans owe them something from long ago. They're not threatening us, but they're desperate. Something terrible is chasing them." The message ended abruptly. Deho looked at his crew. They all had the same confused expression on their faces. "Set course for Kepler 442b, Deho ordered. "Maximum speed." 3 days later, Deho's ship arrived at the farming world. The planet looked peaceful from space with green fields and blue oceans. But as they got closer, they could see strange ships in orbit. The ships were beautiful, made of what looked like crystal and metal mixed together. Deho took a shuttle down to the colony's main building. Sunja was waiting for him at the landing pad along with Hae-jin, the colony's scientist who studied alien life forms. "Thank you for coming so quickly," Sunja said as they walked into the building. "The Villani have been here for 2 days. They won't hurt anyone, but they refuse to leave until they speak with someone from Earth's government." Hae-jin led them to a large room where the aliens were waiting. Deho had seen many different alien species in his years of service, but the Villani were unlike anything he had ever encountered. They were tall and thin, with skin that looked like living crystal. Their faces were gentle, and their large eyes seemed very old and wise. The leader of the Villani stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I am Kethara, elder of the Villani. We have traveled far to find humans. We come not as enemies, but as those seeking help from old friends." Deho bowed slightly, following diplomatic protocol. "I am Captain Deho of the Terran Defense Fleet. How can we help you?" Kethara touched a device on its arm and a holographic display appeared in the air. It showed star charts and what looked like historical records. 800 years ago, when your species first traveled between the stars, a group of human explorers encountered a cosmic storm. Their ship was damaged and they were lost in space far from home. The display showed images of an old human ship, primitive compared to modern vessels. It was battered and drifting in the darkness of space. "My ancestors found these humans," Kethara continued. "The storm was growing stronger, and our own ship was in danger. But we could not leave the humans to die. We used our ship's power core to boost their engines and guide them to safety. Our ship was destroyed in the process, but the humans survived." Deho watched the holographic recreation of events that happened centuries before he was born. He could see Villani ships sacrificing themselves to save human explorers. "Before they left," Kethara said, "the human captain made a promise. He said that if the Villani ever needed help, humans would repay the debt. He said humans would come when the stars themselves were threatened." The elder's crystalline face seemed to grow sadder. "Captain Deho, that time has come. The stars are indeed threatened." The holographic display changed to show a massive fleet of dark ships moving through space like a plague of insects. Everywhere they went, planets went dark and civilizations disappeared. "This is the hegemony of worlds," Kethara explained. "They have been conquering and enslaving species across the galaxy for 50 years. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. They simply take everything and everyone." Hae-jin leaned forward, studying the images. "How many worlds have they conquered?" 12 species have been completely enslaved," Kethara replied. "Billions of beings now work in their mines and factories. Entire planets have been stripped bare. The hegemony grows stronger with each conquest." Deho felt a chill run down his spine. "And they're coming for you?" "They have already destroyed our homeworld," Kethara said. The pain in the elder's voice was clear even through the musical quality of Villani speech. "These ships carry the last of our people. We have nowhere else to run." Sunja spoke up. "But why come to us? Humans are strong, but we're just one species. How can we fight something like this?" Kethara looked directly at Deho. "Because humans are the only species that has ever kept a promise for 800 years. Every other race we have encountered forgets their obligations within a generation or two." But human records still contain the story of our first meeting. You still remember the debt? The elder touched its device again and new images appeared. These showed human space over the centuries, expanding slowly but steadily from system to system. More importantly, Cathera continued, humans are the only species we know that prepares for war even in times of peace. Every other civilization builds defenses only when threatened. Humans build weapons and train soldiers even when there are no enemies. Deho realized this was true. Even now, in an era of relative peace, humans maintained huge fleets and constantly developed new military technologies. Other species often criticized humans for being too warlike. We do not ask you to die for us, Cathara said. We ask only that you honor the old promise. Help us find a way to stop the hegemony before they consume everything. The room fell silent. Deho understood that this moment would change everything. The decision was too big for him to make alone, but he could see the desperation in the Villani elder's eyes. I need to contact Earth, Deho said finally. This decision must be made by our leaders. But I promise you this, your message will be heard. Cathara bowed deeply. That is all we can ask. We will wait. As Deho prepared to send his report to Earth, he couldn't shake the feeling that the galaxy was about to discover something terrible about humans. Something that had been waiting 800 years to be revealed. The debt was about to be paid, and the payment would be more terrible than anyone could imagine. Admiral Taman stood at the head of the long table in Earth's most secure military facility. Around him sat the most powerful people in human space: generals, admirals, politicians, and scientists. The holographic display in the center of the room showed the same images that Cathara had shared with Captain Deho. The situation is clear, Taman said, his voice echoing in the large room. The Villani have called in a debt that is 800 years old. They want our help against something called the hegemony of worlds. Defense Minister Youngsuk shook her head. With respect, Admiral, this is not our fight. We have no obligation to throw away human lives for aliens we barely know. Actually, we do. The voice came from the back of the room. Everyone turned to see Jin'e, a young historian who rarely spoke at these meetings. She stood up holding an old data pad. I've been researching our records since Captain Deho's report arrived. Jin'e continued. The debt is real and it's bigger than just a rescue mission. She activated her data pad, and new information appeared on the main display. It showed technical diagrams and mathematical equations. The Villani didn't just save our explorers, Jin'e explained. They gave us the quantum navigation technology that makes faster-than-light travel possible. Without that gift, humans would still be trapped in our solar system. The room fell silent. Everyone knew how important space travel was to human civilization. Without it, they would have no colonies, no trade routes, no expansion into the galaxy. Military strategist Hyunwoo pulled up more data. Even if we owe them, look at what we're facing. The hegemony has 50,000 warships. They've never been defeated. They've enslaved 12 different species. He pointed to the display showing hegemony fleet movements. Their ships are larger than ours. Their weapons are more advanced, and they outnumber us 100 to 1. This isn't a war we can win through normal means. President Dongmin had been quiet throughout the meeting. Now he stood up and walked to the window overlooking Earth's capital city. Millions of people lived their daily lives below, unaware that their leaders were deciding whether to risk everything for an ancient promise. Jin'e, the president said without turning around. Tell me about your grandfather. Jin'e looked surprised. Sir? Your grandfather was one of the explorers saved by the Villani, wasn't he? I remember reading about it in your family history when you applied for this position. Yes, sir. Commander Park Jin'e was the captain of the exploration vessel that got caught in the cosmic storm. And what did he write in his personal logs about that day? Jin'e's voice became softer. He wrote that the Villani elder told him their navigation technology was a gift, not a trade. They said that one day humans would need to choose between honor and survival. The technology was to make sure humans would be strong enough to choose honor. The president turned back to face the room. It seems that day has come. Xiong-ho, the head of military intelligence, had been studying data on his personal tablet. Now he looked up with a strange expression on his face. Actually, Xiong-ho said slowly, we might not need to choose between honor and survival. All eyes turned to him. He stood up and connected his tablet to the main display. For the past 800 years, while other species have focused on exploration, trade, and diplomacy, humans have been doing something else. We've been preparing for war. The display showed charts and graphs that most people in the room had never seen before. They detailed military production, weapon development, and strategic planning going back centuries. Every human colony has hidden military facilities, Seung-ho continued. Every trade ship can be converted to a warship within hours. Every civilian has basic military training. We've been building the largest war machine in galactic history, and we've been doing it so quietly that no one noticed. Young-suk stared at the data. This says we have over 2 million ships that can be militarized. How is that possible? Because humans never forgot that space is dangerous, Seung-ho replied. Every other species relaxed once they achieved space travel. They focused on peaceful expansion. Humans never relaxed. We kept building weapons and training soldiers because we knew that someday, somewhere, we would need to fight for our survival. Hyunwoo was studying the technical specifications. These weapon systems, some of this technology is more advanced than what the hegemony uses. How long have we been developing this? Since the day the Villani saved our explorers, Seung-ho answered. The survivors of that mission came home with more than just navigation technology. They came home with a warning that the galaxy was full of dangers. So we prepared. Admiral Taemin leaned forward. Are you saying we can actually win against the hegemony? Seung-ho's smile was cold. I'm saying the hegemony has no idea what they're dealing with. They've been conquering species that fight like civilized beings. They use honorable tactics, formal declarations of war, and rules of engagement. He paused and looked around the room. Humans don't fight like that. We fight to win no matter the cost. We study our enemies for generations before we strike. We use fear as a weapon. We make war so terrible that our enemies prefer surrender to resistance. The president sat back down at the head of the table. Seung-ho, are you recommending that we honor the Villani debt? I'm recommending that we show the galaxy why humans are the only species that other species whisper about in the dark. The hegemony thinks they're the most feared force in the galaxy. They're about to learn they're wrong. Jine spoke up again. There's something else in my grandfather's logs. The Villani elder told him that humans were different from other species. Most civilizations develop weapons to defend themselves. Humans develop weapons to destroy their enemies completely. Young-suk shook her head. This is madness. Even if we can win, the cost will be enormous. Millions of humans will die. Millions of humans will die anyway if the hegemony continues expanding, Hyunwoo pointed out. They're not going to stop with the Villani. Eventually, they'll reach human space. President Dongmin stood up again. The decision is mine to make, and I've made it. We will honor the debt to the Villani, but we won't fight this war the way the galaxy expects. He turned to Seung-ho. Activate all hidden military assets. Begin mobilization of the reserve fleets, and prepare Operation Nightmare. Several people around the table looked confused. Operation Nightmare? Young-suk asked. Seung-ho's smile grew wider. It's our plan for total psychological warfare. The hegemony conquers through fear and overwhelming force. We're going to show them what real fear looks like. As the meeting ended and the leaders filed out to begin preparations, Jine remained behind, looking at her grandfather's old logs on the display. The Villani had been right 800 years ago. Humans were different. They were about to prove just how different they could be. The galaxy was about to discover that there were things more terrifying than conquest and slavery. There was human determination to keep a promise. Commander Bo Young sat in the pilot seat of her stealth ship, watching the hegemony supply convoy through her sensors. 12 massive cargo vessels moved slowly through space, protected by only 6 warships. The enemy clearly didn't expect any resistance in this sector. Target the cargo ships first, she told her squadron through the communication system. Remember, we want survivors. Lots of survivors. Her pilot Kyung-min looked confused. Commander, wouldn't it be more effective to destroy the escort ships first? Bo Young shook her head. We're not trying to win a normal battle, Kyung-min. We're trying to win a war through fear. Dead enemies can't spread terror stories. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Human ships appeared where they shouldn't exist, struck targets that seemed impossible to reach, and disappeared before the enemy could respond. But the most confusing part for the hegemony was that humans rarely tried to completely destroy their targets. In the hegemony command center on their capital world, Overlord Vashatai studied the reports with growing confusion. The alien leader stood over 3 meters tall with gray skin and forearms that ended in sharp claws. The hegemony had conquered 12 species using overwhelming force and terror tactics. No enemy had ever confused them like this. "Explain this to me again," Vashatai growled at his intelligence officer. "The humans attacked 18 supply convoys in the past week, but only destroyed 3 of them completely." The intelligence officer, a member of a conquered species called the Threnodi, trembled as he spoke. "Yes, Overlord. In most cases, they disabled the ships and left the crews alive. The survivors report that the humans played strange sounds through the ship speakers, music, voices of children, and something they called laughter." Vashatai's 4 eyes narrowed. "What kind of psychological warfare is this? Are they trying to drive our people insane?" Before the intelligence officer could answer, another report came in. A major hegemony military base had been attacked by only 12 human ships. The base's defenses should have easily destroyed such a small force, but somehow the humans had gotten inside the shields and disabled the main power grid. "How many casualties?" Vashtai demanded. "Only 47 dead, Overlord, but over 3,000 personnel are reporting psychological trauma." The humans left messages written on the walls in the local language. They said things like, "We know where you sleep and your children are not safe." Captain Wu Jin was leading another type of mission on the other side of hegemony space. His ship had been specially modified with Vallani navigation technology, allowing it to appear in impossible locations. Today, his target was a hegemony civilian station that processed food for military bases. "Remember the plan?" Wu Jin told his crew as they approached the station. "We're not here to kill civilians. We're here to make them afraid to help the military." The human ship surrounded the station so quickly that the inhabitants had no time to send a distress signal, but instead of attacking, Wu Jin opened a communication channel to the station. "Attention civilian population," his voice echoed through the station's speakers. "This is Captain Wu Jin of the Human Defense Force. We know you are not soldiers. We know you have families. We know you just want to live in peace." The aliens on the station listened in confusion. This wasn't how conquerors usually spoke. "But you are helping the hegemony kill innocent people like the Vallani," Wu Jin continued. "So now you have a choice. Stop helping the military, or we will make sure you never feel safe again." To prove his point, Wu Jin had his technical expert, Min Jung, hack into the station's systems. Suddenly, every personal communication device on the station displayed photos of the owner's family members, along with their home addresses. "We know where you live," Wu Jin's voice continued. "We know where your children go to school. We know where your parents work. If you continue to help the hegemony, we will visit each of these places." The human ships left without firing a single shot. But the message was clear. The civilians stopped production immediately and began evacuating their families to distant star systems. Back on Earth, Admiral Taemin was receiving reports from all fronts. The human strategy was working better than anyone had expected. Instead of fighting massive fleet battles, human ships were creating chaos throughout hegemony space. "The enemy doesn't understand our tactics," reported Colonel Sang-ho, who was coordinating the psychological warfare campaign. "They're used to fighting civilized species that follow rules of war. They've never encountered an enemy that uses fear as the primary weapon." Director Yunbi, who monitored galactic communications, had even more interesting news. "Admiral, we're picking up communications from neutral species throughout the galaxy. They're more afraid of us than they are of the hegemony." Taemin looked surprised. "Why?" "Because the hegemony conquers and enslaves, but then they stop. The conquered worlds know what to expect. But humans, we're unpredictable. We show up anywhere, anytime, and no one knows what we'll do next." This was exactly what Sung-ho had planned when he designed Operation Nightmare. The goal wasn't just to defeat the hegemony militarily, but to make them so afraid that they would surrender rather than continue fighting. On a hegemony military world, General Caxtor was experiencing this fear firsthand. His base had been attacked 3 times in the past month, but each attack was different. The first time, humans had destroyed the landing pads and left. The second time, they had disabled the food production facility. The third time, they had somehow gotten inside the officers' quarters and left small devices that played human children, singing lullabies at random times during the night. None of his soldiers could sleep properly anymore. They jumped at every unexpected sound. Morale was collapsing, and several officers had requested transfers to safer positions. The worst part was that General Caxtor knew the humans were doing this on purpose. They could have killed everyone in the base during any of their attacks, but they chose to let them live in fear instead. Meanwhile, Commander Bo Young was preparing for her most ambitious mission yet. Intelligence had identified a major hegemony fleet gathering point where over 500 warships were assembled. A normal military force would either avoid such a target or attack with overwhelming numbers. Bo Young was planning to attack with just her single squadron of 12 ships. The goal isn't to destroy the fleet, she explained to her pilots. The goal is to prove that nowhere is safe from humans. We're going to get in cause chaos and get out, but most importantly, we're going to make sure the survivors remember this day for the rest of their lives. Her plan was simple and terrifying. The squadron would use their stealth technology to get close to the hegemony fleet, then activate every sensor and communication system on maximum power. They would broadcast human music, human voices, and human laughter across all frequencies while performing impossible maneuvers around the massive enemy ships. We want them to feel helpless, Bo Young said. We want them to realize that humans can go anywhere and do anything. We want them to understand that their size and numbers mean nothing against human determination. As her squadron prepared to jump to the target system, Bo Young received a message from Admiral Tae Min. The hegemony had sent a diplomatic transmission to Earth requesting negotiations. They're already breaking, the Admiral reported. But don't stop the mission. We want them to be so afraid that they'll agree to any terms we offer. Bo Young smiled. The galaxy was learning that humans didn't fight like other species. They fought like humans, and that was more terrifying than any weapon ever created. Admiral Namsu stood in the center of the Human Psychological Warfare Division, watching dozens of screens that showed the effects of their campaign across hegemony space. Each screen displayed a different alien species, and each species was being terrorized in ways specifically designed for their particular fears and weaknesses. Report, Namsu ordered as Minho, the chief xenopsychologist, approached with his data pad. The terror campaign is exceeding all expectations, Minho said, his voice filled with a mixture of pride and horror at what they had accomplished. Each species in the hegemony is experiencing psychological breakdown, tailored to their specific mental vulnerabilities. Namsu nodded. This had been his idea from the beginning. While other military leaders focused on weapons and ships, he had spent years studying every alien species that humans had encountered. He had built detailed profiles of their fears, their cultural taboos, and their psychological breaking points. Show me the Threnody results, Namsu requested. Minho activated one of the screens. It showed underwater cities where aquatic aliens lived in dome-shaped buildings. But something was wrong. Many of the buildings were dark, and the few aliens visible outside seemed to be moving frantically. The Threnody evolved from prey animals in deep oceans, Minho explained. Their greatest fear is the sound of ancient predators that used to hunt them. We've been broadcasting modified recordings of these sounds through their communication networks. The screen showed Threnody civilians fleeing their cities in panic. Their military commanders were struggling to maintain order as soldiers abandoned their posts to escape the terrifying sounds. How effective has it been? Namsu asked. 3 Threnody military bases have surrendered without a fight, Minho reported. They begged us to stop the sounds and promised to withdraw from hegemony service. Namsu smiled coldly. And the collective? Another screen activated, showing a species of insect-like aliens that shared a hive mind. They normally moved in perfect coordination, working together like parts of a single organism. But now chaos reigned in their colonies. The collective strength comes from mental connection between individuals, Minho explained. We developed isolation fields that cut off individual collective members from their hive mind. The psychological trauma of sudden isolation drives them insane within hours. The screen showed collective soldiers running around in confused circles, unable to function without their mental connection to others. Some were curled up in corners, rocking back and forth as their minds struggled to cope with being alone for the first time in their lives. How many have we affected? Namsu asked. Over 50,000 collective soldiers have been isolated, Minho replied. Those who haven't been directly affected are so afraid of isolation that they refuse to fight anywhere near human forces. Director Yunbi approached from her communication monitoring station. Admiral, we're receiving reports from across the galaxy. Neutral species are evacuation border systems. They're more afraid of accidentally getting involved in our war than they are of the hegemony. Namsu looked at the galactic map on the main screen. Red dots showed hegemony territory, blue dots showed human forces, and yellow dots showed neutral species. The yellow dots were rapidly moving away from any area where red and blue were close together. "What are they saying about us?" Namsu asked. Yunbi looked uncomfortable. The Zalari Federation issued a statement calling humans the nightmare species. The Antaran Republic has closed all borders to human ships. Even species that have been friendly with us for decades are cutting off contact. Minho pulled up another report. "Admiral, we're also seeing effects we didn't expect. Several species that were conquered by the hegemony are starting their own rebellion movements, but they're using our tactics instead of traditional warfare." Namsu was intrigued. "Explain." "The Villani have learned psychological warfare from watching us," Minho said. "They're using their crystal technology to create harmonic frequencies that cause hallucinations in hegemony soldiers. The Keth Empire is broadcasting recordings of their death rituals into hegemony bases, convincing enemy soldiers that they're already dead." The screens showed chaos spreading throughout hegemony space. Conquered species that had been enslaved for decades were suddenly fighting back, not with weapons, but with fear tactics copied from human methods. "The hegemony's greatest strength was always terror," Namsu observed. "They conquered through fear. Now we've shown everyone that fear can be used against them." A new alarm sounded, and Captain Wu Jin's face appeared on the main communication screen. He was reporting from deep inside hegemony territory. "Admiral Namsu, we've completed the mission at the hegemony fleet gathering point. The results were remarkable." "Show me," Namsu ordered. The screen displayed footage from Wu Jin's attack on the massive hegemony fleet. 12 small human ships had appeared in the middle of 500 enemy warships, and begun what could only be described as a performance of terror. The human ships moved in impossible patterns, spinning and dancing between the massive enemy vessels while broadcasting human music at full volume. The song was an old Earth children's lullaby, but played at frequencies that caused physical pain to most alien species. "We stayed for exactly 13 minutes, Wu Jin reported. "We didn't fire a single shot. We just flew around them, playing music and showing them that we could go anywhere we wanted." The enemy fleet's response had been chaos. Some ships tried to attack the humans but couldn't hit the fast-moving targets. Others tried to flee but found their escape routes blocked by dancing human vessels. Most just sat there, paralyzed by the realization that their massive fleet was completely helpless against 12 small ships. "What was the aftermath?" Namsu asked. "The fleet scattered within an hour of our departure," Wu Jin replied. "Our intelligence sources report that many of the ship captains are requesting transfers to non-combat positions. Some have abandoned their ships entirely." Minho was analyzing the psychological impact data. "Admiral, this attack has had effects far beyond the immediate target. Word is spreading throughout the hegemony that human ships can appear anywhere, anytime. Their soldiers are becoming afraid to serve on any vessel." Namsu turned to another screen that showed the hegemony capital world. Overlord Vashitai's government was clearly struggling. Emergency meetings were being held constantly, and there were reports of panic among the civilian population. "The hegemony leadership is fracturing," reported Colonel Sang Ho, who specialized in political analysis. "Several subordinate commanders have secretly contacted us about surrender terms. They're more afraid of continued human attacks than they are of punishment from their superiors." This was exactly what Namsu had hoped for. The goal had never been to destroy the hegemony through military force. The goal was to make them so afraid that they would destroy themselves. "How long until complete psychological collapse?" Namsu asked Minho. The xenopsychologist studied his data carefully. "Based on current trends, the hegemony military will be unable to function effectively within 2 months. Civilian morale is already at critical levels. Some conquered species are reporting that their hegemony overseers have simply abandoned their posts and fled." Namsu nodded with satisfaction. For 800 years, humans had been preparing for this moment. They had studied every possible enemy, developed weapons for every scenario, and created strategies that no other species could imagine. But most importantly, they had learned that the greatest weapon wasn't technology or numbers. It was the ability to make your enemies afraid to fight you. "Continue all operations," Namsu ordered, "but prepare for Phase 2 of the campaign. Soon we won't need to attack hegemony forces. They'll be too busy running from their own shadows." The galaxy was learning a terrible lesson about humans. They didn't just fight wars. They turned their enemies' greatest strengths into their greatest weaknesses. They made terror itself a weapon, and they wielded it with precision that no other species could match. The hegemony had conquered through fear. Now they were being conquered by it. The hegemony capital world had never seen panic like this. In the Grand Command Center that had once coordinated the conquest of 12 species, chaos reigned supreme. Overlord Vashti stood before a massive display screen that showed the collapse of his empire in real time. Red warning lights flashed across the galactic map as system after system reported the same impossible news. Human ships were everywhere, doing things that should have been impossible, and leaving behind psychological devastation that was spreading faster than any plague. "Explain this to me," Vashti roared at his terrified intelligence staff. "How can 12 human ships destroy a supply depot, leave all the workers alive but make them too afraid to return to work?" The intelligence officer, a Threnody named Zektar, trembled as he read the report. "Overlord, the humans didn't harm the workers physically. They replaced all the food supplies with recordings." "Recordings of what?" "Human children singing, Overlord. But the songs contain mathematical patterns that create psychological trauma in our species. The workers report nightmares, hallucinations, and an overwhelming fear that human children are watching them." Vashti's forearms gestured angrily. "This is madness. We have 50,000 warships. How can we be defeated by an enemy that fights with children's songs?" Before anyone could answer, another report came in. General Caxtor's voice echoed through the command center from a distant military base. "Overlord, we need immediate evacuation. The humans have been here again." "What did they destroy this time?" Vashti demanded. "Nothing, sir. They left gifts." The command center fell silent. Even in the middle of a war, no one had expected that word. "Gifts?" Vashti repeated slowly. "Yes, Overlord. Small packages on every soldier's bed. Inside each package was a photograph of the soldier's family, along with a note saying, 'We know where they live, but we choose not to hurt them. Yet.'" Vashti realized that this was worse than any attack. His soldiers were now afraid not just for themselves but for their families on distant worlds. Many were already requesting permission to return home to protect their loved ones. "How did they get inside a secured military base?" Vashti asked. "We don't know, sir. There are no signs of forced entry. It's as if the humans walked through our walls." Across the galaxy, similar reports were flooding in. Human ships appeared in impossible locations, performed impossible tasks, and left behind evidence that they could strike anywhere, anytime. But the most terrifying part was that they often chose not to kill their enemies. On the agricultural world of Kepler 442b, Elder Kithara watched the galactic news with a mixture of awe and concern. The Villani had asked humans to repay an old debt, but they had never imagined anything like this. "Perhaps we have made a mistake," said another Villani elder, Sothena. "The humans are not just fighting the hegemony. They are terrifying the entire galaxy." Kithara's crystalline features reflected the light from the news displays. "They are doing what they promised. They are repaying the debt, but they are doing it in the most human way possible." The news showed footage that no one could fully understand. Human ships dancing through hegemony fleets while playing music. Hegemony bases found with all weapons disabled but all personnel alive and traumatized. Supply lines disrupted not through destruction, but through psychological warfare that made workers too afraid to do their jobs. On Earth, President Dongmin was meeting with his advisors in the secure command bunker. The reports coming in were almost too incredible to believe. "The hegemony is collapsing faster than we projected," reported Admiral Tayman. "Several species that were conquered decades ago are declaring independence. But they're not fighting traditional wars. They're copying our psychological warfare techniques." Director Yunbi had been monitoring communications across the galaxy. "Mr. President, we're receiving surrender offers from over 300 hegemony commanders. They're not even waiting for orders from their superiors. They're just giving up." Gildong, who had been coordinating the psychological warfare division, looked both proud and disturbed. "Sir, we may have created something we can't control. Fear of humans is spreading to species that aren't even involved in this war." President Dongmin studied the galactic map. Areas that had been under hegemony control for decades were suddenly free, but they were also evacuating all population centers near human space. "What are the neutral species saying about us?" Dongmin asked. Yunbi looked uncomfortable. "The Galactic Council has issued a statement calling for containment of the human threat. Several major trade routes have been closed to human ships. The Antaran Republic is building defensive installations specifically designed to keep us out of their territory. Minho, the xenopsychologist, had been analyzing the broader effects of their campaign. Mr. President, we've fundamentally changed how the galaxy views warfare. For thousands of years, civilized species have fought according to established rules and traditions. We've shown them that those rules are meaningless. Explain, Dongmin requested. Every species in the galaxy fights to control territory, resources, or populations, Minho continued. But humans fight to control minds. We've demonstrated that physical victory is irrelevant if you can make your enemies afraid to resist you. The president walked to the large window that overlooked Earth's capital. Outside, people continued their normal lives, unaware that their species had become the most feared force in galactic history. Are we winning? Dongmin asked. Admiral Taman checked his latest reports. Sir, the hegemony has effectively ceased to exist as a military force. Most of their ships have either surrendered or fled to distant systems. Their conquered territories are either independent or under protection of species that learned our warfare techniques. And the Villani debt? More than repaid, sir. The Villani are safe and the hegemony will never threaten anyone again. But what, Admiral? But we may have solved one problem by creating a bigger one. The galaxy is now more afraid of us than they ever were of the hegemony. President Dongmin turned back to his advisors. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Gildong spoke up. Sir, we've proven that humans can project fear across thousands of light years. Every species in the galaxy now knows that we can reach them anywhere, anytime, and that we fight wars in ways they can't understand or defend against. The question, added Yunbi, is what we do with that fear. Do we use it to maintain peace or do we let it turn the entire galaxy against us? President Dongmin was quiet for a long moment. Outside the window, children played in parks, unaware that their laughter had become a weapon of terror in distant star systems. Contact Overlord Vashatai, Dongmin finally said. Tell him we're ready to discuss terms for the hegemony's complete surrender, and prepare a message for the galactic community. What should the message say, sir? Yunbi asked. The president's expression was stern but not unkind. That humans always keep their promises. We promised the Villani we would repay our debt, and we have. Now we're making a new promise to the galaxy. We will remember everyone who helped the hegemony hurt innocent people, and we will remember everyone who didn't. As preparations began for the final phase of the war, reports continued to arrive from across the galaxy. The hegemony's surrender was inevitable, but the real victory was that every species in galactic space now understood a fundamental truth about humans. They were not like other civilized species. They were something else entirely. Something that turned nightmares into weapons and used fear itself as a tool of war. The galaxy had asked for human help, and they had received it. Now they were learning to live with the consequences of that choice.